Welcome to the Association 4.0 podcast, your association's no fluff playbook to navigating and thriving in Industry 4.0 or the digital marketplace. Each week, we bring expert insights to help you and your association stay ahead of the curve.
I am joined by Jason. Is it Wampler?
Yes, ma'am.
Jason, what do you think of the conference so far?
Tell you what, I've only attended a few virtual conferences before, and usually they're kind of bumpy. This one is really slick.
Oh, well, thanks so much.
Content has been amazing. Topics have been spot on. And what's interesting is I've got a colleague at another conference right now, and the topics that are being talked about, it's almost as if there's a reoccurring storm, if you will, of transformation that's coming our way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you think about it, associations probably
AI
have a lot of things on their minds, right? Yep. Tell us about some of the topics that are on your mind.
You've got AI, you've got, the non-dues revenue angle. It's the trying to do more with less. And it's just, it becomes challenging on all fronts. And, it's like, how do you keep up? And in some cases, it's, education, it's networking and leaning on those partners that are kind of already developed it, or at least trying to get out ahead of it. And then, associations can kind of use the best products that are available.
Well, Jason, tell us about your organization. And I know that you've got a specific interest in AI.
I do.
And you are doing some pilots. So why don't you tell us about the organization?
Yep. So I belong to the International Society of Automation. I'm the director of IT there. And we've got a unique, I'll say, business case of sorts. But it started to sound very similar once we were talking today, that we've got a digital library of standards. So, the medical profession could probably have, cases as far as medical cases and studies and that kind of thing. So it's something similar to that. But what we're looking at doing is providing a ChatGPT-like client that can consume that particular content, whether it be documents, videos, webinars, that kind of thing, and provide it to our members in an agent that they can go in and say, hey, I'm getting ready to look at, cybersecurity is one of our large ones. It's IEC 62443. And I'm a tech guy and I'm not a standards guy, but I remember these numbers now. But we're looking at trying to find ways so that when our members go in and say, hey, talk to me about this subsection, how is it applicable to, let's say, the oil and gas industry or the smart buildings industry, it can come back with a, at least a viable answer so they can at least talk to their higher ups and, apply it accordingly.
So Jason, today, if I was one of your members and I wanted to look for specific information about a specific standard for the oil and gas industry, I would probably do something in your site search, and I would probably, find the standard, look up the standard, and hopefully, like cross fingers, find the guidance about that standard.
Correct.
Which could be in a webinar, it could be in a blog post, it could be in a journal article, it could be in, a podcast. So what you're saying is you're going to use generative AI, train it on your content, which will then allow your members to ask meaningful questions and thoughtful questions and deep questions about your content.
Correct. And from that point, have it cited or noted to where it would need to go jump it to get there. So it's almost like that I think there was an earlier presentation on like website content and having it so sprawled out. This almost becomes an agent to help unify that.
Yes.
And bring it all together.
Right, because it's bringing all the content together, it's summarizing and synthesizing, and hopefully giving you the information that you're looking for. So Jason, tell us how you're doing this. Like what's the tech that you're using?
I'll kind of preface this. We're still in the getting ready to do this type stage. So we went through kind of like an RFP process of, do we build this, straight from scratch, or do we lean on a partner to do this? And right now we're at the lean on a partner until we got signatures and that kind of thing, because we're still in like the, hey, try this out. I'd rather not say who that is.
Sure.
But it's somebody already in the industry, and they've already done it for, I'll say, let's call it a parent association of sorts in our space.
I see. So what's the timing on this? And can you give us an idea of budget? Is this like gajillions of dollars?
No. We originally had looked at this, and I'll go kind of full scale. If you were to do this out of the gate and have to build it from scratch using a ChatGPT agent, getting a development team on, custom dev, you're talking, high 5 digits. You're approaching 6,
Yeah.
because you're looking at hosting, the privacy, feeding it the content, and so forth. That's custom. We were looking at, okay, that, and what if we took this off the shelf? Well, if you go off the shelf, then your upfront capital cost isn't nearly as much. So you're talking, high 4 digits, low 5. So
Wow.
footprint of getting in the door is not nearly as bad. But now you've got like this SaaS product that you need to look at. Okay, what are we looking at throughout the year? So
the recurring costs might be a little bit higher than if you built
correct,
it yourself.
correct,
Okay.
correct.
So, Jason, there's a lot of talk with AI about the models, right? Where
Mhm.
they'll say, do you use someone else's model or do you build your own? What are you guys thinking?
We are thinking of in the sense of building it on our own. And the reason for that goes back to that whole hallucinating type of
Yes.
deal.
Yes.
Now, granted, that means that our content has to be as pure as possible, which means it may also have chances to hallucinate. But guess what? We would be the ones at fault for doing it. So it's no different than if you go on Google right now and say, tell me how to make chicken soup, and you get 10 answers. Well, the first 4 are spot on, but then the next 5 are like,
Who
you don't even
knows?
have chicken in the soup. So how can you call it that? Right.
Right.
So,
Right.
so at least with ours, we'll know the content was procured by us, but then having a mechanism within your platform to say, you know what, that answer isn't quite on par, then you can start doing this whole, I can start coaching it. So that the analogy of the agent being a toddler is awesome, because at some point you got to teach the toddler, you know what, that's not true. You're telling a lie.
Wow. Jason, to embark on a project like this, what kind of skill sets and what kind of roles in the association are involved in this?
You would think it's technical, but really it's not. You
You need
really
some
need to.
subject matter experts, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's the folks that know the content that the model or the agent is actually learning on. The project's kind of, I'll say, it's been brought to IT because, well, IT has to find a way to talk to where the content is lying. Okay, well, that's fine. And guess what? We're probably done and out in 2 weeks. Where it really
Ah,
starts to end up rolling is where you have to have your, subject matter on, whether it's for us, it would be the cybersecurity standard. I'm going to need to have folks go in and do the prompting and response, gathering of how well is this thing answering? Is it spot on? Otherwise, if we turn this thing loose and, the fifth person out of the public comes in and asks it a question and it's nowhere near right, then we start hitting that trust theme that I've heard go throughout the day.
yes.
And our agent isn't answering in a truthful or what we think should be a truthful manner. And we've lost all credibility at that point.
Oh man, I hope I have more time with you because I got lots of questions. So, Jason, are you thinking that this generative AI, chat bot that you're building, is it going to be something that's available only to members or will you make it public or both?
And that would be the
$64 million question?
well, I don't know if it's going to be 64 million. At least I'm hoping that budget's not nearly that high. No, I think initially what we're looking at doing is kind of keeping this under wraps for members, at least
Okay.
initially,
Right.
because that helps us validate what it's doing, because the members are the ones that really should know what this content is anyway.
Ah,
But also it helps, it speeds the process up of what they're having to do. However, at the end of the day, we also want other organizations and individuals that are in our space to want to lean on us to be that one source. So it might be one of those where phase 1 is just our, members proper. Phase 2 becomes, yeah, we're going to let the public hit it, but we're only going to let you ask maybe, let's say, 5 questions, 10 questions. Or maybe you can only ask one question, but the length of it, or I'll call it methodology or difference, could be in play. But then we'll have some form of an upsell engine in it to say, you know what, you really want more, become a member.
so where are you sourcing these subject matter experts and are you going to be using the members?
We have, I'll say, a few folks on staff that we will be able to, I'll say, not necessarily be the gatekeeper, but might be the first pass. We do have some board members that are very passionate about this particular project, so we will be leaning on them as well. And then I would anticipate us having a focus group of folks that are already in the space of not only the standards, creation, they're looking at AI agents of their own at their own corporations.
I
Because
see.
the organizations that we are representing are some of your bigger for-profit Fortune 500.
Jason, give us some context. How much content are we looking at and what form does it take? Journals, podcasts, videos, audio, written?
Check, and check.
Okay.
Yep.
So, I mean, like, what are we talking? 300,000 pieces of content, 20,000?
I would say with the standards, we're probably, in that, let's call it 10,000-ish range, depending on
Okay.
how you see the derivatives of that going on. But then we've also got symposiums that we've got from years back that we could still look at cataloging. We've got our own digital magazine that we've got from back to 2010. So you're talking 13 years that was done every month and up until the last couple of years. So it's every other month. So you've got, that kind of thing that we're looking at, as well as webinars. And then we've got kind of like we call them on points, but again, it's like this kind of conversation where our members came up with a topic at our sections or our divisions, and they, talked about, hey, how this is being applied, whether it be at the local level, as far as like, with government, or at the, call it the state and or federal level.
Wow. So you got quite a bit of content.
We've got enough to really train this thing well. It's just going to be a question of, leveraging that and getting it all available to it, because some of that content is still, I'll call it, more localized and not cloud available yet, if I can kind of disseminate it that way.
Jason, if some of this content is in audio and video, does it have to go into a transcript and then go into the model, or can it consume audio and video?
It would need to be transcribed, but there are some platforms that have that type of, kind of like how Sherry was saying earlier about add-ons and that kind of thing.
Yes.
That's how that kind of stuff would plug in. So think of ChatGPT almost as like a Lego of sorts, right? It can do one thing, but then as you want other things to happen, it's just more of a plug-in of, hey, I need this to look at images. I need this to look at beyond just regular text in a Word doc. I need it to actually go in and do what we would typically have called OCR.
Right.
For PDFs, it'll do that. What I've not seen it do, which I'm really anticipating, is the whole, okay, now I'm going to give it an MP4 video that we've got, or an MP4 of an audio of a podcast.
Right.
Let me see that come across. But we've already actually seen, I would say, some of that tech already with like Teams and Zoom and those kinds of things, where you see the transcription going on the fly on the side. It's already got it. It's just a matter of, do you turn it on and then make it know that that's the particular content that it got it from.
Right. I see it in Zoom, and I have to say that it makes quite a number of mistakes.
That is true.
In the words, and sometimes I look at, because I take captions from my recordings, and I think, is it because I'm mispronouncing these words? Do I need to enunciate a little bit better?
Yeah, I think sometimes there are words in the English language that just sound alike, right? Like if I say, "Dear Joanna," okay, is it a "Dear Joanna" as in like in a letter, or am I talking like Bambi and it's got an actual like animal named Joanna?
Right, lead. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But as these tools continue to evolve and it continues to, I'll say, get improved upon, and these types of exceptions get fixed, it's just going to only improve the way that the tool and the errors will hopefully taper off. Now, that doesn't mean that you still shouldn't have a human check this thing at the end of the day. I mean, it's no different than the self-driving car. Yeah, you can let it drive maybe a little bit through the city, but I'm not necessarily going to be on like I-95 or 94, depending on whether you're on the East Coast or in downtown Chicago. I'm not doing 75 with that thing. It just doesn't make sense.
Right. And you're not going to look at your laptop the whole time and not look up.
But it's interesting to note, Joanna, I'll kind of leave kind of like the topic of that on this, is a lot of the tech or a lot of the stuff that we had seen in science fiction, in the 90s and the 2000s, if you will, each iteration, it seems like that we're coming, the cell phone, was basically brought up with, like, say, Star Trek back in the 60s. I mean, that was the flip phone.
We still need to be beamed up, though. That would be awesome to be beamed to California.
They're not quite there yet.
Jason, we've been talking about this generative AI project or initiative that you have, at the society. Do you have other AI pilots that you've got going?
We've got a couple others where it's more of we're dabbling in the platforms themselves that have it.
Yes, us too. What are you playing with?
Yeah, so we've got one that we're goofing around with right now in HubSpot. So as far as like marketing,
Yep.
but that almost takes like what marketing had before, where you would sit back and say, okay, I've got a campaign. So if an email comes across and you've clicked on something, then you go to the next thing. So you've got that kind of automation that's already in play.
Sure.
But a person had to have already set up what that looks like as far as the logic. Well,
Right.
Now you're removing kind of a little bit of that and saying, you know what, I want you to take care of that and help follow where this is going along. If we lose somebody, we're looking at that one currently. The Salesforce Einstein AI, we haven't turned that one on yet, but that one we're definitely interested in because we also.
What do you think that'll do for you?
For us, it's going to be more of a looking at the membership and trying to find out patterns and when we lose folks. For us, it's if we can get you to renew and get you to renew up until like year 3 to 4. If we can get you into that, year 3 to year 4, we've got you for life.
Interesting.
We know that already. It's those first 3 years that we've got to make sure that we've got you engaged. So it's one of those where, what's the telltale of how did we lose you or where did you drop off or, was it too much communication? Was it not enough communication? We don't have that answer.
Can AI tell us that if it's too much or too little? Because I'll tell you, I spend a lot of time thinking about this and, I'm kind of challenging my team to think about this. And I don't know that we've got any answers. One thing that we're looking at is can less AI and more machine learning, which I know, and what we're trying to figure out is, are there common patterns to the member journey? What are the 5 or 6 common journeys or pathways through the association? And which of these seem to generate engaged members? So like, we'll say things like, okay, a client might have a hypothesis. And the hypothesis might be that if they attend a webinar in the first 90 days and attend convention in the first year, they're members for life. So that might be a hypothesis. And then we kind of look at the data. I don't know that it's AI, but it is still amazing insight if you can figure that out.
It's close. But imagine doing that type of questioning at scale.
Okay.
That's what this is.
And imagine someone else asking the questions and coming up with the hypothesis.
Right. It comes back saying, I think I've seen a trend kind of thing. But I don't think it's there yet, at least in my opinion. It also, I guess, is predicated on making sure your data is clean.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we're back to that first question of, when I go to ask a question of how much soup or the chicken noodle soup, if I'm looking at stuff that's just not right, then it's going to start predicting stuff that's just not right. So I think, again, it's one of those when we're looking at AI and it's coming back with an answer, we need to proof it to say, okay, does this really make sense? And does this meet I'll call it, like the focus group of who we're looking at? I don't think in our instance, I don't think we can look at our entire membership base and say, show me the trend. I think we would have to actually have it down to more of like a small subset of that, where we kind of already got the answer, but needed to give us the validation that, yep, we're on the same page.
So, Jason, this sounds like a combination of machine learning, AI, analytics, and maybe just some surveying of members too, because there's some things that you won't know unless you talk to them or you survey them. Do you guys have an active practice to do this? Because if you do, tell us about it.
We don't have an active practice, or at least is not as much as I think, I'll put it this way, that we will need to have.
Yes. Okay.
Because at the end of the day, when we start getting into this, let's call it the next phase, after we get done with the library project that we've got going on, when we get into that next phase, I think you have to have that other validation to the questions themselves as far as in the analytics, because that's almost 2 different use cases on how you're asking ChatGPT or those AI agents to behave. On one side, I'm asking you to do content dissemination of, hey, here's all my stuff summarized for me.
Right.
Okay, that's one thing. This other one, I'm saying, hey, take a look at my data and tell me where are we hurting.
Take a look at my data and the information about what my members are doing and not doing.
Correct.
And tell me if you can spot some trends.
Yeah, or I think the term I've heard used at times, the mood or the behavior type of,
coaching. Like the sentiment analysis kind of thing.
That's exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Are
Yeah.
you playing with other tools? Like, for example, I saw a demo of Copilot, which sits on top of Office 365, and
Microsoft.
we're not an Office shop, so
Hmm.
we're actually G Suite, and so we're actually trialing Duet right now. And
Correct.
there's like half the companies trialing Duet. Are you guys in any pilots like that right now?
No, I'll say we're not seeing enough value at that point, at least with
Okay.
as it's being introduced.
Okay.
Now, that's not to say that come at this rate that they're developing this, that mid-year next year, that this becomes almost like a second hand. Like, why aren't you using it? Because it's helping you make sure that your day is being optimized with meetings, or hey, you forgot this one. And let me follow up with an email for this vendor, and then turn right around and it's already scheduled it for you. That kind of stuff would be nice, especially for
Nice.
me,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
I'm sitting here talking with partners or consultants. It seems like every time I turn around, and then I need to have time in my day to say I need focus time. Well, where am I going to find that? Turn right around and ask Copilot. It'll turn right around and do it for you.
Right.
It's that kind of level of
Right, right.
becoming that
Because I mean,
digital
Google
assistant.
Calendar will tell me that.
Right.
I'll say,
No,
find a block of time where I can focus. It's kind of interesting. Are there tools that you're really excited about?
I'm interested to see how it gets played into some of these analytics platforms that we've got. We currently are in the middle of a A2 implementation,
Mhm.
and they had just recently switched from their standard to the AI acumen
Yeah, yeah,
portion of
yeah.
it. I'm actually excited about looking at that. There is also some other vendors out there that will improve your site search on your website alone. So think of back to my library project. If I were to take that, and instead of just making it looking at, let's call it the procured and standards content, I tell it, you get my entire website, blogs, everything.
Right.
Now I've opened up the portion of our site to say, okay, when I come in, not only can I search for a standard, but it can turn right around and start being almost like a upselling agent of its own,
Right.
and say, oh yeah, by the way, we've got a training in 2 weeks. You might want to look at that. Bang, 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 bang,
Love
bang,
it.
and here's the link.
Absolutely
So
love it.
so it's that kind of stuff of trying to just continue to think ahead of how do I make that user experience for our members that much more valuable when they're coming to our site, and not just a transactional interaction. It needs to be more than that.
Jason, you've got automation in the name of the association. How is all of this affecting the membership and how are they taking to it?
That is a loaded
It's
question.
got to be affecting them, right?
Yeah, it's a loaded question. In some cases, got some members who kind of have that fear or worry that AI is going to take their job and that kind of thing. But when you actually hear, I'll say, more of our long-term members, those that have been in the automation space longer, they realize that what, automation is just a part of this like journey that we're all on.
Absolutely. It is absolutely part of the continuum.
Right. So at some point becomes we're good up to here. Now we need to retool again and, learn, new skills, basically upskill or level up, depending on how
Yeah,
you want to
yeah.
call it.
Okay.
And then, move on to whatever that next adventure is. And right
Yeah.
now it looks like it's AI and machine learning.
Jason, I'm being told by the broadcast engineer that we're almost out of time. I am so grateful to you. I bet you didn't know that I
I,
was going to do like 30 questions here.
yeah,
You've
no,
been amazing.
yeah, Kevin teed me up a little bit and said, well, you know what? You're going to be talking with Joanna a little bit. We'll be talking this. It'll be just have a conversation with her. It's like,
Yeah,
all right,
yeah,
I know I
no.
can do that.
And I'm a professional questioner.
Well, and troublemaker, from what I
I
understand.
am a troublemaker. So, Jason, if people want to get in touch with you,
If they want, they can email me direct at jwampler@isa.org, or if nothing else, just look me up on LinkedIn.
I love it. Boy, you've been absolutely amazing. You and I can have another conversation about the results of this generative AI initiative that you have. It sounds absolutely amazing.
That will be a very interesting discussion. Yes, it will be.
Jason, it could be really game changing for the organization because instead of you just presenting all these bits of information, they'll be able to get synthesized information and insight.
Yeah, I think our biggest challenge right now is not so much the tech, not so much the how do we make sure it talks and consumes our content, but more of how do we protect the content? How do we make sure we've got a terms of use, the IP protection, kind of some of the stuff I had asked earlier. which it sounds like we may have a guest speaker later today, to actually talk.
Yes, exactly. He was going to talk about the legal aspects.
Yeah,
and I hear that Kevin is coming up. Jason, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and discovered tips and information that will add value to your leadership style and your association. .org Source specializes in positioning teams for success with solutions for technology, strategy, and marketing. Please contact us at info@orgsource.com or visit www.orgsource.com to find out how to keep your organization on track to Association 4.0.